All right, here we go once again. You've tuned into Heroes Wanted. I am your host, Joe Prim. The mission of this podcast is to help fathers get unstuck and to engage life with discipline and purpose. So first off, I would like to apologize for not having a podcast last week. I've got a lot of responsibilities right now, and I'm trying to juggle being a husband, being a father, a full-time job, a podcast, coaching, and leading in the community as part of the grazing committee here where I live. The other part of it is I really felt that this podcast that I'm recording right now needed to be done, and I wasn't ready for it. I'm no longer a part of the grazing committee here in my community. Apparently, there was an issue in voting me in, and those of us that got vocal or asked too many questions were not invited back after this voting discrepancy was discovered. So, obviously, I will continue being a leader in my community, but not being a part of this grazing committee will give me a little bit more freedom with my time. Yesterday, I did another Strength Through Adversity 12-hour walk. This time, I did it with my buddy over from Weaponized.Design. Go check out his website. He's got a lot of cool patches and flags, a lot of really historical morale-type patches, ranging from everything from, like I said, historical flags to some cool flags from Lord of the Rings. And then he's got a very unique sense of humor, so he's got some patches in his collection that are just different, that you're not going to find anywhere else. We had a great time. The weather was perfect, and it was a challenging day with a lot of 12 hours worth of great conversation. So this is my second time doing the Strength Through Adversity walk. 12-hour walk with rucks. We don't weigh the rucks. Just take with you what you need and what you feel like you can carry. But with each time, I'm learning more and more how to better prepare myself or how to last the 12 hours. At some point, my goal is to do a 24-hour walk. I will probably keep doing some of these and keep pushing a little bit, and then maybe towards the fall or winter of this year, go ahead and challenge myself to a 24-hour walk and see what we can make happen. I also, if you are interested in journaling, I put a post out on Facebook and Instagram a while back about journaling and why I think it's important, but there are a lot of challenges that I faced in starting to journal and use that as a tool that I could leverage in my life for growth. I just recorded up a video. I had a new program that I've been working on myself, that I worked through, that I had spent the last month and a half or 2 months working through myself. And I just recently recorded a video on how I do the journaling system and use just like a field notebook for it and write a very consistent program that I use each and every day. If you are interested in journaling or interested in that program, you can direct message me on Instagram at Prepare.Defend.Lead or find me on Facebook at Joe Prim. And find me there, shoot me a message, and I will get that video sent out to you. I think it is very, very pertinent. I think that learning how to leverage our experience in that day can make dramatic effects for ourselves moving forward. So if those of you who have been listening to this podcast for a while know that I do not talk politics. I do not talk about geopolitics, because the focus and the purpose, the mission behind this podcast is growth for you. Growth for you, growth for me. It is about growing as a father, as a husband, and as a leader in your church, in your community, at work, at your in your business. But every once in a while, I do talk on politics. But when I do, I always try to bring it back around to something about growth, and that's what I'm going to attempt to do here. So some of you may want to tune me out immediately as I get into geopolitics, and I respect that. Not going to hurt my feelings if you don't want to hear anything that challenges you. The only one that's going to miss out is you. But if you would like to listen through to this podcast, I think that there are some things that you can dig out of this that will help you grow and help you look at things differently moving forward. When I have talked about geopolitics and politics and the news in the past, I've talked about such things as giving out a warning before the COVID lockdowns, letting the men that listen to this podcast know that there very well could be a shortage of food, a shortage of different supplies as we came up to that 2 weeks to flatten the curve that we all know lasted longer. But at that point, we didn't know. And I got emails and messages back from people saying, hey, I appreciate the heads up. We were able to secure what we needed before the stores were depleted. I gave my thoughts before the 2020 election and reminded everybody that I believed there would very likely be a color revolution in this country, similar to what had been done or had been attempted all around the world over the past few years, whether it was in what happened in Ukraine or any number of other countries that had so-called color revolution. Directly after the 2 weeks to flatten the curve, I came out with a podcast called The Paradigm Shift. In that episode, I explained why I believed that we would never go back to a normal, why things had changed completely, and why we needed to adapt to that change rather than think that it would ever come back. And I did a short video after January 6th, where I made some predictions on how the incidents of that day would be leveraged against conservatives and used against them moving forward. At that point, I predicted things pretty much right on for what we had to look forward to. So I don't delve into the topics of geopolitics or the news regularly. But when I do my best to think things out. And when I do, it is an opportunity to learn, to see a different perspective perhaps, and to grow. And that is my attempt today, because there is a lot of chatter going on. There is a lot going on in our world today. A lot of craziness and a lot of lies and a lot of deception. In my book, Open, Six Life-Changing Principles, I talked about this idea of opening your mind to the lies that are around you is something that I've been talking about since I started podcasting 6 or 7 years ago. This is something that I've talked about over and over and over again, but I want to read to you a short part of the book, or actually a couple parts of the book, where I touch on exactly what this podcast is going to be about today. In the beginning of the book, I talk about the Wizard of Oz and the characters of the Wizard of Oz and the mission that they go on to kill the witch. And then I go into this. This is similar to what goes on in our world today. We become so entranced by the glitz, glamour, lights, and glory of sports and news and television programming that we lose track of the fact that we are constantly being sold something. Sometimes it's an upgrade to something we already own, a new car or a watch or even a pair of shoes. But often we're being sold something else, something insidious. More often than not, we're literally being sold a set of moral standards, beliefs, allegiances, or even lifestyle. Everything from TV to Facebook is offering something that we, like the small group of friends in the Wizard of Oz, fail to ask some simple questions. We proceed to kill the witch, buy the shoes, use the hashtag, nod our heads, and believe that the lies or change of values and beliefs based on a promise made by someone with their own agenda. We must open our minds to the facts that we are being lied to for the gain of others, for business, our government, our churches, the kingdom of this world. Then I go into a few examples of lies that are an everyday part of our society. And then I talk here about, haven't these lies cost you enough already? As a toddler, we are overwhelmed by the world around us. Our senses are pouring in information that we don't understand. At this young age, we have no frame of reference to help us categorize density, color, or simple physics, let alone motion and language. Because of this, one of the first words that a toddler learns shortly after mama and mine is the word why. Why is a powerful word. It can bring instant clarity to a situation or break down a passionate argument. Why has power to break down your beliefs, your values, your opinions, or those of others into small, decipherable pieces or strengthen and codify them. It doesn't take long, though, for a toddler to realize that other humans would rather not explain things or acknowledge the fact that they don't know why a duck says quack or a banana is yellow. They sadly learn that questioning usually isn't worth the trouble because people don't know or don't want to be bothered with the question or the answer. Much like the toddler in this day and age of social media, constant entertainment, and distraction, our senses are dumping information at a rate with which we cannot possibly keep up. By discouraging questions, we create people that are either afraid to ask why or don't even bother to think about it because they don't realize the potential power of asking why. In order to move past opening your mind to the possibility that things are not what they seem to be and becoming active in this principle takes a mind shift. To reiterate this thought and this idea, I wanted to also hit on an ancient writing of Plato and his allegory of the cave. Plato begins by asking Socrates to imagine a cave where people are imprisoned from childhood. The prisoners are chained so that their legs and necks are fixed, forcing them to gaze at the wall in front of them and not to look around the cave or at each other or themselves. Behind the prisoners is a fire, and between the fire and the prisoners is a raised walkway or a low wall, behind which people are carrying objects or puppets of men and other living things. The people walk behind the wall so their bodies do not cast shadows for the prisoners to see, but the objects they carry do, just as a puppet showman have screens in the front of them at which they work the puppets. The prisoners cannot see any of what is happening behind them. They are only able to see the shadows cast upon the wall in front of them. The sounds of the people talking echo off the walls, and the prisoners believe these sounds come from the shadows. Socrates suggests that the shadows are reality for the prisoners because they have never seen anything else. They do not realize what they see are objects in front of a fire, much less that these objects are inspired by real things outside of the cave, which they have never seen. The fire, or human-made light, and the puppets used to make the shadows are done by artists. Plato, however, indicates that the fire is also the political doctrine that is taught in a nation-state. The artists use light and shadow to teach the dominant doctrines of time and place. That was from Wikipedia. Now I'm going to jump into an article here on masterclass.com written by simply, I believe, let's look it up here again, the Masterclass staff. What does the allegory of the cave mean? Plato uses the cave as a symbolic representation of how human beings live in the world, contrasting reality versus our interpretation of it. These two ideas reflect the two worlds in the story, the world inside the cave and the world outside. For the prisoners in the cave, the shadows on the wall created by the firelight are all they know to be real. If one of these prisoners breaks free and witnesses the outside world, they will come to understand that as the true reality. However, When the freed prisoner returns to the darkness of the cave, his eyes will now have been blinded by the light of the sun, and their fellow prisoners still inside the cave will believe that the outside world, that it's harmful to them, and the truth is not worth seeking. I'm going to be doing a lot of reading on this podcast because I can either make this stuff my own, or I can read it right from the source and have it done with the sources, and I think you will have a better understanding of the points that I'm trying to make and what I am so worried about at this time. The allegory of the cave is ancient, but yet it distinctly describes people having their own truth and people not being exposed to reality and the effects of people not being exposed to reality. Because their reality is the reality that they have been shown, is the reality that has been fed to them since they were children. I want to read a short piece here in Mind Over Media. They have a section on propaganda. Recognizing propaganda. Propaganda appears in a variety of forms and uses common techniques to successfully influence people, including activating strong emotions, responding to audience needs and values, simplifying information and ideas, and attacking opponents. Technique. Activate strong emotions. Propaganda plays on human emotions. Fear, hope, anger, frustration, sympathy to direct audiences toward the desired goal. In the deepest sense, propaganda is a mind game. The skillful propagandist exploits people's fears and prejudices. Successful propagandists understand how to psychologically tailor messages to people's emotions in order to create a sense of excitement and arousal that suppresses critical thinking. And we'll get back to that again further on. By activating emotions, the recipient is emotionally moved by the message of the propagandist. Labeling is another weapon of choice for the propagandist. What emotions are important for those who create propaganda? Fear, pity, anger, arousal, compassion, hatred, resentment. All these emotions can be intensified by using the right labels. Technique 2. Simplify information and ideas. Propaganda may use accurate and truthful information, or half-truths, opinions, lies, and falsehoods. Successful propaganda tells simple stories that are familiar and trusted, often using metaphors, imagery, and repetition to make them seem natural or true. Oversimplification is effective when catchy and memorable short phrases become a substitute for critical thinking. Oversimplifying information does not contribute to knowledge or understanding, but because people naturally seek to reduce complexity, this form of propaganda can be very effective. Technique 3. Respond to audience needs and values. Effective propaganda conveys messages, themes, and language that appeal directly and many times exclusively to specific and distinct groups within a population. Propagandists may appeal to you as a member of a family, or a racial or ethnic identity, or even your hobbies or favorite celebrities, your beliefs and values, or even your personal aspirations and hopes for the future. Sometimes universal values are activated, as when our deepest human values, the need for love and to be loved, to feel a sense of belonging and a sense of place, are activated by propaganda. By creating messages that appeal directly to the needs, hopes, and fears of specific groups, propaganda becomes personal and relevant. When messages are personally relevant, people pay attention and absorb key information and ideas. Technique number 4, attack opponents. Propaganda can serve as a form of political and social warfare to identify and vilify opponents. It can call into question the legitimacy, credibility, accuracy, and even the character of one's opponents and ideas. Because people are naturally attracted to conflict, a propagandist can take strategic use of controversy to get attention. attacking opponents who encourages either or us versus them thinking, which suppress the consideration of more complex information and ideas. Propaganda can also be used to discredit individuals, destroy their reputation, including specific groups of people, incite hatred, or cultivate indifference. Are you starting to see a pattern here? I want to read this about fifth generational warfare. It was written by Stephen Yates in a website called News with Views back in November of last year. What then is fifth generation warfare and why did it happen? Its primary difference from fourth generation warfare is startling at first glance. To defeat an enemy without that enemy realizing he was under attack. Violence is therefore minimal, happening at the fringes, sometimes noisy, but with subordinate aims, distracting from what is really occurring. Fifth generation violence is some black-clad Antifa clown sucker-punching Richard Spencer. Neither has a clue who the real enemy is. While fourth generation warfare was strong psychological components, fifth generation warfare is primarily psychological. Policies aren't acted to reinforce psychology. These rely on the fact that attacks do not have to kill or maim. They can confuse, disorient, and demoralize until the enemy is helpless. Fifth generation warfare thus uses scare tactics, repeated incessantly, gaslighting, and nudges, and these work to undermine the target's convictions of what is really happening, or is it true. So instead of insurgents, one has media shills, disinformation agents, and enforcers of various sorts, e.g. fact-checkers. Think of all that has been said about how we are now in the post-truth world. Think how words like truther and truthiness are used to ridicule. I submit that we are under fifth-generation attack that is global in scale. Just as an example of false stories that we have been fed since the beginning of the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, we have examples like the state Snake Island, where the guys said they defiantly stood up against the Russian Navy and were shot down. We have the ghost of Kiev, an imaginary fighter pilot who was taking down countless MiGs out of the sky over Kiev. We have an issue where Fox News was showing supposed Ukrainians with AK-47s going throughout Kiev, where in reality their guns were not real. They were made out of paper. And we got that picture of that woman with her head bandaged up and the blood flowing that was on the front cover of every website and every newspaper, only to be found out that that was from a gas explosion in an apartment complex 3 or 4 years earlier. That, along with the pictures of the president of Ukraine in his body armor, supposedly leading from the front lines, when in reality, once again, that picture was taken many years ago. I use these as examples because so many of the stories that have come out, so many of the things that have shown up on Twitter or Facebook or in the mainstream media within 24 or 48 hours are shown to be completely false. It is a completely false narrative that we are being fed. Now, I want you to know that I haven't just listened to one side of the story, and I'm not siding with anybody on this ball game. But when I listen to the proponents of war and the proponents of getting the U.S. involved in yet another conflict overseas that appears to be starting on a foundation of lies, not unlike the Gulf of Tonkin incident in Vietnam and the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, my listening to the State Department's story on this begins and ends when they expect me to believe that the United States government is speaking from a place of honesty and truth. Is everything that we're being fed a lie? No. That would be the opposite of fifth generation warfare. But there are enough lies intertwined into what is going on and what is being said to add confusion. And this confusion and these lies are being perpetrated intentionally to cause anger and cause emotion, which lead to people making bad decisions. I've done many podcasts here and bring it up consistently, the danger of fear. The danger of fear causing you to make bad decisions, to make bad choices, because when you are focused on fear, it is impossible to make wise choices and to critically think. And again, I've listened to more than one interview with people from the State Department and people with differing insights into what's going on right now in Ukraine. What I find very interesting is that even those people that I have listened to that are part of so-called missionary organizations seem to be exactly repeating the lines of the State Department. And once again, when no blame is attributed to the United States at all, any mistakes, no missteps, only completely one-sided in evaluation, I have to go back and look at the history even of these missionary groups or these organizations that I have financially supported and wonder if they are not more of an NGO in more supporting the United States government in their activities with my money than they are pushing forward the gospel. I think that's a fair question when the United States government lines come up in their interviews. Now, I was pretty shocked when it came up this time around, but I shouldn't have been, because they also, this organization I'm thinking of, carried the same State Department government lines when it came to Syria. This should have been a red flag to me at the time. It wasn't. I continue to support them financially. Now, something that I'm going to have to think about, something I'm going to have to pray about before I continue doing that. Now, as I said, creating fear, creating emotional instability are a great way to garner support for what you want to do. We read clearly through what fifth generation warfare is and the power of AI, the power of the mainstream media, the power of social media to write a narrative that's not that unsimilar to what Plato was talking about way back when he wrote The Allegory of the Cave. As I was just talking about how your fear and your emotions can be leveraged to hurt you, as I talked about in my book, to prevent you from thinking through things clearly. I want to read a section out from the website The Human Givens. I've learned a little bit about the human givens and that idea from Scott Mann in his podcast, The Rooftop Leader. So this is, he talks regularly and even had the author of the book Human Givens. What Human Givens, just a brief idea and thought about it, is these people who wrote this and had this idea was that there are certain things that are givens, right? They are givens for what human beings need in order to exist and be healthy. So I wanted to read a blog post from May, actually, of 2014 from thehumangivens.com. And it says, emotional arousal makes you stupid. You may have noticed that someone who is incredibly angry seems incapable of seeing wider viewpoints or following a rational discussion about what is annoying them. This is an example of black and white or nothing. thinking and occurs when the emotional limbic system inhibits access to rational neocortex. To put it simply, the brain gets too emotionally aroused to think rationally. Black and white thinking is a feature of all highly emotional states, including depression and anxiety. In order to deal with feelings of anxiety and depression, it is important to recognize that when black and white thinking is occurring and learn how to get back to your rational observing self and lower your stress levels. Which, right, for the last 2 years, 3 years, our stress levels have been continually ramped up constantly by social media and by the mainstream media. I'll jump back into this article. Emotional arousal makes you stupid. When you get anxious in any situation, your brain instinctively starts to prepare for fight or flight response and begins to set off high emotional arousal levels in the lower primitive brain to unlock all available attention on the threat and enable you to make quick decisions to run or fight as fast as possible. High emotional arousal in the lower regions of the brain obstruct the higher cortex, inhibiting and simplifying logic thought in order to react in the fastest way to possible danger. This mechanism behind black and white thinking is sometimes not appropriate to less life-threatening anxieties of modern life. If you are walking through a jungle and suddenly hear a roar or a loud crashing noise coming towards you, you would immediately react by running for your life, rather than standing still, weighing up the consequences to wait and see what it is you heard from a rampaging elephant or not. Waiting for logical thought to kick in is too slow for urgent survival situations. So your amygdala would rather make the embarrassing mistake of running when there is no danger than making one fatal error in judgment that might cost you your life. In these moments of very high emotional arousal, thoughts become oversimplified and black and white thinking happens. Your amygdala sometimes does this job too well, as it knows one mistake could be fatal. However, in some areas of modern life, oversimplification thinking is not as useful as it once was when we lived in a constant danger for our physical survival. And black and white thinking can become destructive as an anxiety limits our perspective and stops us from being able to clearly see our situation. Black and white thinking is occurring whenever you find yourself saying or thinking things like, "My whole life is a disaster from start to finish. I can't do anything right. Everyone hates me." These statements are very likely to be untrue. Or take a moment to do something to calm your amygdala and limbic system. And don't let emotionally black and white thinking trick you into thinking thoughts that would make anyone feel bad. I have been shocked to see those that for the last 4 or 5 years have been consistently speaking about fake news and were on top of things that were going on with COVID and suspicious because of ideas of fake news, so quickly buy into this AI-controlled MSM and social media-fueled propaganda. I don't want to be here and ever be in the position to tell you what to think. What I do want to do is remind you to think for yourself, to not allow fear and emotions to be triggered and put you in the situation where you are only thinking in black and white, where you are no longer capable of critically thinking through what you are being told or what, as I talked about earlier, you are being sold. I'm going to jump back into a short part in my book here. My mom would regularly remind us of the Edgar Allan Poe quote, "Believe nothing you hear and only half that you see." And although I had heard it 100 times, I did not clearly understand the point she was trying to make. The reality, we live in a world full of lies, omissions, and half-truths. There's little around us that we can or should fully trust or believe in. But this leaves us at a crossroads. Either we can continue to take everything at face value, or we can open our mind and begin to question things. Question our beliefs, our affiliations, and our standards will generally result in one of two things. We abandon an old belief, affiliation, or standard, or having fully flushed out our belief, affiliation, or standard, we can now move forward fully committed. As you begin to critically think through what you are being exposed to, what it is that you believe, and what it is that you are being encouraged to do or say or believe, I want to leave you with this verse in Matthew 24. And Jesus answered and said unto them, this is 24:4, take heed that no man deceive you, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you not be troubled, for these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. So remember, see that ye not be troubled, and take heed that no man deceive you. Having lived and spent time in a third world country myself, I want to make clear that I do feel for those that are in Ukraine. These wars, these proxy wars, take advantage of the smallest amongst us and use them as pawns in their games. My friend that I mentioned earlier in the podcast that did the 12-hour Strength Through Adversity walk with me yesterday, you can go to his website at weaponized.design, is taking donations right now for an orphanage that he has personally worked with in the past that's in Ukraine. He personally vouches for it. He knows the people that run the orphanage. He has personally been to that orphanage. Take that compassion, that emotion that you're feeling, and feed it into something positive. Give to this organization. Go to weaponized.design. He's got a lot of awesome patches there to check out. But he's also, like I said, taking donations and has some information there about this orphanage that they have worked with in the past. Dads, are you stuck? Are you feeling lost, frustrated, and lacking a purpose? Are you in a rut and going through the motions day after day and not getting anywhere? If I could guarantee to get you out of this rut and have clarity and direction in your life, feel confident in yourself and your decisions, and find purpose, would you take me up on that offer? Here's how it works. You work with me one-on-one. We'll meet once a week on Zoom for 45 minutes for 12 weeks. And I'll provide you with a personalized plan to get you unstuck and very clear on where you're going. Weekly video lessons so that you can learn what you need to do, and assignments so that you can put into practice what you learn. And challenges to get you outside of your comfort zone where growth occurs and confidence is born. And I'll even provide the required books, including my favorite book on leadership, an awesome leather-bound journal, several field notebooks, and the supplies needed for you to succeed will be delivered right to your front door in the U.S. Now, there will be effort and sacrifice involved because everything of value has a price. But I will be with you every step of the way with 24/7 support via text so that I can help keep you on task. You will need to show up on time and prepare for the one-on-one calls and complete the lessons, challenges, and assignments. But don't worry. Where you see uncertainty, I see your potential. I have been there and have experienced this journey myself firsthand. Now, what happens if you show up on time, prepared for the one-on-one calls, complete the lessons, challenges, and assignments for the 12-week duration of the program, and don't find clarity and direction in your life? You don't feel confident in yourself and your decisions, and you don't find purpose? I will keep coaching you for free until you do. There's absolutely no risk of you not leveling up. The program is about change, is not about change. It's not about evolution. It's about a new you. It's about uncovering the hero that is within you, that has been buried under years of lies, fear, and expectations of others. Sure, you can continue doing nothing, but you know exactly where that leads. You can try to do it yourself and read countless books and watch a bunch of YouTube videos. Be careful, those cat videos are distracting. And listen to hours of podcasts hoping to find something that clicks. But if you're serious about finally taking control of your life, dropping the excuses and becoming the father, husband, and leader that you want to be, let's schedule a strategy call where we can design a plan to get you out of the rut and headed to where you want to go. And as I try to fill out my client chart as we start out this year, I will offer $1,000 off of the next 3 clients that sign up with this program. Again, $1,000 off this program. You can email me at jprim@heroeswanted.us, or you can go to sleekbio.com/heroeswanted and schedule a strategy call right from there. As always, men, hold fast and God bless.